Welcome to Successful Living Radio, the place where we practice and develop success habits through engagement and education that leads to transformation. Each show features leaders who change the world at large by starting in their own communities. And now, with today's show, is our host, Anita Maxwell.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Successful Living Radio with Anita Maxwell. I am your host, Anita Maxwell. We always appreciate you all taking time out of your day or night or whatever time you are listening to our show to just find out who we are talking to, what we're talking about, and how we can impart things into you to help you live your most successful life. I am so excited about today's show, as I am all the shows. I tell you, we really have a dynamic group of entrepreneurs, leaders, life givers, all kinds of people who are willing to come on to the Successful Living Show and share their life experiences, their journey, and I know that we can all glean something from their information. Whether you are a new listener or you were with us the last time we aired, I want you to be involved. It's important. We have guests every month, but you are the VIP of the show. We'll have guests, but you have a reserved seat behind the velvet rope. So thank you all so much. You will be able to listen to the show at www.success-full-living.com as well. So thank you for your support in advance. I'd first like to talk to those of you who maybe you've never listened to the show before and you're wondering why successful living. Well, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to communicate to an audience, and in fact, what I do as a career, it was really about how do we live our most full life. And we all have our measure of success. And so I, first of all, tell people, you know, if you want to be successful or you feel like you are already somewhere in your life and you think you're doing okay, my first question is compared to what? Compared to what? And so this show, we want you wherever you are, if there is another notch for you, which if you are breathing, there should be, because if we're still here, there is still more that we can do on this earth, then our goal is to push you to that next level of success in your life. Successful living is the place where we practice and develop success habits through engagement and education that leads to transformation. Together, we live up to that definition of success, and we agree to be stretched beyond those limitations we have often placed on ourselves. So this isn't about stories we've read. We are the story. We're living it. We will pour into you the beliefs, the examples, and the know-how to reprogram your hardware. Our mission here is to provide ideas and methods that can be used to help you experience your most full and successful life. After all, life is short. Live it well. Live it successfully, and that's our motto here. So who is this show for? This show is for anyone who is open to be engaged, educated, and therefore transform their lives. It's for the person who understands that there is more to life than existing, because there is. It's for the person who wants to take it to the next level for wherever you are. You can. For the person who works hard every day but feels like you have nothing to show for it. Change something. For the person, the entrepreneur, the business owner who grinds daily and needs support, you have it here. For the visionary who needs help figuring out how to take the leap, join us. For the person who needs to surround themselves with winners, you are welcome here. So that is successful living, and hopefully if you have never listened to us before, you are inspired to keep being a loyal listener. And for those of you who regularly listen to us, thank you so much. This show cannot be everything that it is intended to be without your support. So with that being said, today I have someone here, and I'm really excited to talk to this gentleman. Our show times are always so limited compared to the many things we can pull out from the extraordinary stories of our guests. But today we have with us Jason Warner. Now, I'm not sure, some of you, I know many of you are listening in and you're familiar with Jason's story, but I hope to give you a different version of what you've heard of him before and how you can tap into what he is doing. So Jason is a CEO, he's an author, he's a speaker, and just all-around change agent in everything he's done. I mean, his background is in government, but he's also just a sought-out professional in community relations and marketing. I mean, sounds like a jack of all trades, right? And I look forward to delving more into his background. But what he's going to be talking to us today, for the majority of the time, about is about his advocacy work, community activism. And don't be scared of that word. We're going to talk to you about what that is, but we all are an advocate of something. If you think about something that you are passionate about, you don't just keep that to yourself. You get out and you try to educate people better. And so that's what Jason does. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our guest, who just happens to be featured in this month's issue of Ebony magazine with Kevin Hart on the cover. So we are in the company of royalty here, ladies and gentlemen. Please help me welcome to the show Mr. Jason Warner.
Thank you
Jason.
so much. Thanks. That's funny. I'm still kind of in shock about that Ebony magazine. Very thankful, and it's because of folks on my social media. There's people out there that have, been following what I've been doing, what the folks that work with me are doing, that has made that possible. I was talking to a good friend of mine. He was like, "Man, you're the only regular dude that can make it into Ebony magazine." I was like, "Hey, who you telling?" It took me by shock, but it goes to, I guess, a testament to, I say, what God is doing through me. I'm just listening and following the direction. It's not about me. It's about what I've been told to do, and just literally following the directions. Even to be on your show today. You reached out based off of me following the direction and continue to push forward.
Well, that's awesome. I will tell you now, I don't often disagree with my guests, but I will tell you there was nothing about you that's regular. But I do understand that a lot of the people in Ebony may have some sort of celebrity and fanfare that follows you. But I think it's a great testament to people that says you don't have to go out and chase that. If you really are following your path and the directions that you've been given, you are so right. When you start to change the world, just starting in your own piece of the world, when you're doing it in the right spirit, people will notice. And people are noticing you because you are taking on some issues for many that might be daunting and scary and controversial and even diverse, but I would even say it's because of a lack of education. So what we want to do here today is we want to educate people on the work you are doing, the importance of it, how it makes us a better community, city, state, country, world by this work. And it's not about leaving anyone out. It is about inclusiveness. So thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for honoring us by being on this show. Remember the Successful Living Radio Show when you become the cover of Ebony, and we can say we remember back when he was on one page and now he's the cover. We were there. The little guys, don't forget us, okay?
Like I said, I definitely won't say the little guys. I think this is a growth process for everyone. And like I said, I appreciate just having the opportunity to share with you, to share with the listeners. I think we're all in this together, and we're it's none of this is about me. None of this is about, I'm going to tell you, it's not about you, Anita, either. It's literally about what we're put here to do, to push people to a forward-thinking process. Whatever their definition of success, their measure of success, whether it be in business and community and relationships, we are that caveat, that tool to impact that next person's life.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. So let's jump into it because I'm excited here. All right, so Jason, I looked at your bio. I realized that you are a sought-out professional for marketing, communications, web design, you name it, community relations. But a big part of that is the relationship building, right? So how does one transition from that person being that professional by trade to community activism? And was there something in particular that lit this flame for your work?
So, the greatest thing and the funny thing about it, none of the things that I do are different. They may title might sound different, but everything I do is to impact change. And what I had to understand at a very young age is my why or my purpose to be here on this earth. And service was in that. I was at lunch the other day, and someone asked me, how did you get here in life, and how did that process develop? I was a physical therapy major in undergrad, and changed my majors 3 years into the program. I said I couldn't do this anymore, so I changed my major to public relations. But at the core of everything, I wanted to be able to impact change. I thought I was going to do that through healing and helping people rehabilitate. Then from my undergrad in PR and on to get my MBA in marketing, it was to impact change through the written word and through building programs and activities to impact change through community and business and what have you. So service and impacting change has always been the root. What I did to do that is little pieces and nuances of change, but the core, my why, my purpose is always, and everyone's why and purpose is always the same, is how you do it is what makes people. Some people can be a doctor, some people will be a teacher or what have you. That what is, it's arbitrary. The why is that constant in that equation.
I like it. And I can't wait to talk to you offline as well, because it's interesting. What you just said is exactly how I described my journey. And I, too, was a community relations professional. And I tell people, that hasn't changed. I've just transitioned into a different vehicle, but the goal is still the same. It really is about service.
Right.
So I love that. And it took a while for me to figure out what that was, too, and what that common thread was, and no matter what the title of the job was.
Right.
So hopefully a lot of people didn't miss that, because I think a lot of times we may be wondering, and I've heard people ask, and I've heard people that I mentor ask me that question. I'm trying to figure out what my purpose and what my passion is. And usually it's tied to that thing that burdens you or your why. And so if you are listening to the show, please get that, dig deeper into that area about what drives you and what that why for you, for our listeners. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, if I can expound a little bit, I can go into it a little deeper, because I help people with their success mapping, right? And to find their why. So the success equation is to solve for why in anything you do. If you find why you're here, why something is doing it some way, why this community is impacted negatively and other communities are not, you will be successful if you can solve for why. So for individuals, and they're looking for, their success equation, what they're doing is looking at when they were a little boy or a little girl and all those things that they wanted to be, all right? It could be a magician, or this or that. When you put those all down on a paper, it maps to that central core of who you are, because that innocence of that 2, 3, 4-year-old kid is just, like the McDonald's, if you believe in magic, you go there. So you put all that down on one side of the page, and then on the other side of the page, you look at what you're doing right now, all right? And then you come to the middle and see why you're not doing the things that, that you wanted to do at age 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you're doing this. A lot of times you're doing the things that you're doing now because of what someone told you. They ask kids all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up, instead of why you want to be when you grow up. If you do that map as a little kid, you can walk into your why and not focusing on the what's, because the what's change. And if your what is not matching to your why, you need to go in a different direction. So many people, when they say walk out on faith and step out on faith, that doesn't mean actually quit your job. That means to walk into what you've been called to do. So if you've been called to be an artist and inspire people through your creative thoughts, work on that passion, walk in that, and all the things that you need to do, you'll be successful in doing it because you're walking in your why. If you're out there just trying to chase a dollar, you'll never be literally successful or fulfilled because you're not walking your purpose. Your purpose is not finance. That comes as an effective walking in your purpose.
Absolutely.
But when you're walking successfully in what you've been called to do, think about it. Some people can be an educator, right? In anything that they want to do. I use my mom for example. She taught elementary school her 36 years in Miami-Dade public school system. That was what she's called to do. She's traveled around the world. She's had the car she wanted, the houses she wanted. She's done all these things on a teacher's salary because she was walking her purpose and everything just came to her. So that's why it's so important to walk in your why or your purpose. And yes, my dad worked. He did all these things. They were both together. But you can see the most successful people in this world, if they're walking in their purpose and their why, everything comes and falls into place how they're supposed to be.
Right. Well, mixed with, yes, obedience, walking in that, and of course, some work ethic behind that too. So.
Oh yeah, you gotta work. No, I'm not saying you have to walk. So see, that's the part. That's walking in it. That's not just saying, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. You gotta actually do it. Like, oh yeah, I said I did it.
Yes, because I run into people all the time, and they're talking about, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this. We have an appearance of success, or maybe we look at someone else, we look at a Jason Warner, and we say, wow, he's walking into his purpose. But you're right, they miss that verb of walking in, and we still have to make sure that we are doing the work. And oftentimes what we want, we like it until we find out the price it's going to cost to get it, and sometimes we're just not willing to pay that price. And so, yes, purpose, walking in it, I love it. So speaking of that, you are now walking in your purpose, and that is leading you into an area of community activism. And so you have the Own the Vision Foundation, and that is Own the Vision Foundation. Now, the mission of your foundation is to serve as a catalyst to develop Black communities across America, to live out the true definition of the word community, where Black people come together with common interests and have joint ownership or participation. So what I want to do next is I want to talk about that, because I think it's important that when people hear Black community and not just general community, especially today where everything is, okay, it's Black Lives Matter. No, it's all lives matter. No, what happened to all the other color lives matter? So let's talk about this first. Let's establish what it means to empower the Black community, because I have heard some, and some of our listeners may truly be curious about this. And this isn't about you talking about you as a listener. If you're not a part of the Black community, you're thinking, oh, there we go again. No, truly listen with your heart about what this means. This is about education. This is not about you listening in already with your rebuttals in your mind. But we all come from our own, we have our own perspective. We're looking at life through our own lens. So please understand, just because someone else's lens is different than yours doesn't mean that it's wrong. So I want to take the opportunity to educate on why this is important. This has such historical context behind it. So for those people who've ever asked, well, why do Blacks always look to separate themselves by designating things as Black, like Black banks, and you've got to have the Black Entertainment Award shows, and you've got to help the Black community? Aren't you a part of the larger community? What would you say? Why is it so important that Own the Vision addresses empowering the Black community?
So I'm so glad you asked that, and I think it goes to the title of this show. What, Dollar Bill?
Mm-hmm.
And that's BUILD, not bills, but it's actually to build, right? So what we did is studied successful communities all across the country and some across the globe, and looked at why they're successful. And we broke it down to I guess, you know, race or ethnic group. And one of the things that stood out is every community in this country, at least, has their own separate economic ecosystem. That all those little cogs or ecosystems create what we're called the American economy. The only group that doesn't participate in this process is Black America, right? So, and when you look at injustice, you don't see Asian America being victimized or being gunned down in the street. You don't see Jewish America. You don't see Italian America. You don't see white America, Arab America, all these different parts of America, which make up America, having these injustices perpetrated against them. And it's because they have economic segregation that creates this whole thing called the American economy. And they have leverage. So if you don't own a seat at the capitalism table, you're never granted a seat at the social justice table. It's about leverage. Everyone doesn't like everyone, but you have to have a leveraged position. It's almost like professional sports, and I give that to people because a lot of people can understand that. The great athletes can say, LeBron, he can pick and choose where he wants to go. You may not like where he wants to go, but he can pick and choose because he has leverage. Kevin Durant can pick and choose where he wants to go because he has leverage. When you're looking at communities, and the word, and that's why in the mission statement it talks about the definition of the word community, because a lot of times people look at the word community and say, well, we live in a certain place and we have some similar values or morals or what have you. But the end of that definition that most people leave out, kind of like the third stanza of the national anthem, is joint ownership and participation. You can't have community without joint ownership and participation. So our goal is to teach Black America to have joint ownership and participation, and ultimately is for any group to be able to own their vision of success in anywhere that they want to be. But we're starting with the quote-unquote least of these because historically, we're the only group in the history of the world that has gone through so much trauma/genocide without any healing. So if you're conditioned not to work in the process, you will never get to a place that you can be successful in the system. For so long, we've been playing checkers and the game is chess. So our goal is just to teach people how to participate just like everyone else participates.
Okay, I love that. So what you did was you really, you touched on so much stuff. That's the beauty about interacting and having these shows. No one ever gets beyond learning, and you are educating me right now. I am learning. I'm taking notes. I'm really captivated by this because what I heard was education. It's at the root of everything, and it's not always a traditional education. Life is continuously about education. And educating us on how to be a bit more self-reliant, joint participation and ownership. That truly is. When you've got ownership, that leverage, you have some options. And so, Jason, you mentioned the historical context. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's put this in the proper historical context because I can tell you, I watched this show on PBS with Dr. Henry Louis Gates. I love the shows that he does about African Americans, many rivers to cross. I wish I could say that I learned and I know enough about our history, but I love these shows and how he goes back and to see these people looking at things historically and explaining what it meant. I get such a sense of pride when I'm listening to what we accomplished, when the world was segregated, when we were more segregated than we are now. We're not legally segregated, but we know that there is still that some goes on. But I can tell you there was one particular show that impacted me recently. I'm originally from Mississippi.
Right.
Small town, maybe a few hundred people. You blink, you miss it. No stoplights, no police department, no stores at this time. I grew up with no running water, no indoor bathrooms. This was me until the 90s. No sewer system in our town, no cable, none of that until the 90s.
Wow.
And what I remember specifically was that we had everything we needed, but that was my question in the beginning, compared to what? I had never experienced anything beyond it, right? So I do remember, though, when I was a younger child, our town was thriving. We had stores. We had, just multiple stores. We actually had activity coming through the town. And if you go there today, none of that exists. We have a post office, which we didn't have back then, but you have no stores now. No law. It was about working on farms, and there were black people and there were white people. The two never mixed unless you worked on someone's plantation, farm. You chopped cotton for them. You farmed, you whatever, and that was our life. That was our life. And I remember as a child, in the summer, we looked forward to chopping cotton on someone's plantation. That's how we got school clothes for the summer, to buy school clothes to go into the winter stuff. You went out all day and you chopped cotton. Now, I remember specifically my dad getting so upset with me because when he chose to move our family to Dallas, Texas, I was crying to go back in the summer so I could chop cotton. And my dad said to me, "You will never chop cotton for somebody else. You will never work another man's field." Because I didn't see the bigger picture. I was a kid who made $15 a day for being in the sun 9 hours, and a week I had like $100. That's all I saw. But I hadn't experienced what he experienced. So that example reminds me of something I saw recently on African American Many Rivers to Cross on PBS. If you haven't checked it out, I recommend purchasing the DVD or whatever. So what I saw was recently they were talking about the history, and a lot of times it goes back to Mississippi because we all kind of were there at some point. Somebody in your family came through Mississippi or around about there in the South. And he talked about Mound Bayou, Mississippi. And he talked about the slaves who ended up getting all of these people to come together. It was a segregated community. They had businesses. They were flourishing. It was a town of all this success. And they did it out of necessity because they were not allowed to do things with whites. As we all know, the history was we were separate. So black people stuck together and relied on each other and had flourishing towns. And this is a story, I'm sure, all over this country where it was done out of necessity. And what that caused me to think was, I know Mound Bayou, Mississippi today, and it looks nothing like that. It is kind of more of a ghost town than you would say flourishing business, black ownership. It is now, granted, it is still a town. There are some wonderful people in Mound Bayou. But what you would not describe it as is a flourishing town with black business owners everywhere like they described it in that show. So what I would like you to talk about is I happen to think that there were some things that changed when we went from segregation to integration. And I think when people ask the question, blacks, why are you wanting banks and this and that, they think you fought so hard to be accepted and to be included in the larger community. Now, why are you trying to separate yourself? So can you talk a little bit about the value of doing it that way and improving the community starting with us?
So, part of it is the use of words, right? So language is everything. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality says I can go into this bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equity says because I am a certain color, race, creed, what have you, sexual orientation, I'm not going to be treated the same. I can, equally, you play basketball. So
yes.
someone can say, hey, you both play, everyone plays basketball so you can dunk a 10-foot basketball goal. Well, you can try, but everyone can't do it. Some people need a ladder. Some people just have those ability, to dunk a basketball. You have people up until just recently, June 29th, the Justice Department fined Bancorp South in Mississippi $15.6 million for charging blacks and Latinos higher interest rates on home loans in redlining districts. Redlining meaning, for those who don't know, where they basically draw a red line in the map and say we're not going to lend to these areas. This was June 29th of 2016. Just a year ago, Fifth Third Bank got hit with a $21 million fine by the Justice Department for charging blacks and Latinos higher interest rates on auto loans. Not because their credit was worse, they weren't bankable, it's just because of the color of their skin. So when you look at equality, yes, we can go into that bank. We can fill out the same paper. We can do all these different things, but the equity is not there. We're not treated equitably. We're not giving the same look just based off of the color of our skin. So when you say you want to go and support a black bank, it's because you can equally go in there but also get the equity. No one has a problem when the Asian community has Chinatown or Koreatown and they use their own banks, they use their own grocery stores or what have you. But it seems to be a problem when black people do it because of the history and the false narrative. And so the country is looking at Columbus Day, right? So the narrative in school is in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America. If I came into your house and said, hey, guess what? I found your house and now it's mine, did I discover it? But that's the narrative. When you look in the history books about the American Indian War, the Americas versus the Native American Indians, the history books will tell you that the Indians were the enemy in this conflict. But if I came into your house, kicked down your door, raped your women, killed and enslaved your men, and abused your children, who would be the enemy? I would. So we have to look at the narrative, and unfortunately, America has an ugly history that they don't want to tell the true story. Up into 2015, McGraw-Hill had the history books that stated that workers came from Africa to work on farming fields, plantation, and build infrastructure. Workers and slaves sound too different. They just changed that in history books in 2015. So it's the narrative and the language that have people saying, oh, it wasn't so bad. When First Lady Michelle Obama said, I lived in a house that slaves were built, Google went crazy because they didn't believe that slaves built that. And then Bill O'Reilly saying that they were happy slaves. Because it's now a cognitive dissonance that has been created. And cognitive dissonance means when you've been told something for so long, even when the truth comes, you still believe what you've been told, that narrative that you've been told. So that's where we have to change. That's why it's important to look at movies like Birth of a Nation to actually see the story of manipulation, because it's not that someone says, hey, we want to keep going back, but if you've never healed a wound, it's going to stay open. When you go to a counselor, and if you are a psychiatrist, psychologist, the first thing they do, they ask you about your past to fix the future, or the present, excuse me. No one for Black America, they don't want to address the ugly history. No one wants to know that their great-great-grandfather was a rapist. That's something that you just can't, it's hard to swallow. No one wants to know that when you look at modern gynecology, that the forceps and all those different things they used on black slave women without any anesthesia and just said, hey, we're going to test things. They don't want to know that they tested infants' brains and they see how much pressure it will use to crush a skull on black slave infant babies, because that gives you a false sense of, wow, this is really nasty and really ugly what's going on. But unless you address the true story, that's why people have like, well, it was a long time ago. You got to move forward. You got to get over it. But you have to address the trauma, or the wound is still open, and it passes generation to generation. It's not that someone wants to be mad, vindictive, having someone pay for generations and generations, but we need to have healing to move forward in this process.
Wow. That's so profound and so real. I think it's easier to, you're right, just get over it, brush it away, than to deal with that. And you're right, we don't ask people to do that in any other kind of trauma. And unfortunately, I think I heard that when I was listening to the African American Museum at the Smithsonian being dedicated recently, and I heard President George Bush say, the younger Bush, say, I was proud to hear him actually verbalize that this country has an ugly history that we're not ready to deal with, we're not willing to face. And that museum is going to remind us of that. You know, some of us never forget it. But I do appreciate
some of us were never told.
Some were never told, and many of us were never told because we read those same history books.
Right.
So those shows like Birth of a Nation and Selma and those other movies, they are so important because many, even black people, are learning about their history for the first time. Now, is it sensationalized a bit? Sure, because we're in Hollywood, but it's not all incorrect. At least it puts us on a different path of understanding than maybe a history book that replaces the word slaves with workers. And so
right.
We, too, grow up with that level of cognitive dissonance that you talk about. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so I get that's why Own the Vision Foundation is saying, look, this is about the healing, because healing has different phases and it has different pieces to it. You don't just heal from learning your history, but you heal through doing it. And what Own the Vision is doing is saying, let's start putting some things in place. Because when we start seeing ourselves do better and believing more in ourselves and having that seat at the table, then we start to see ourselves differently, and others will start to see us differently. We'll start to respect ourselves differently, and some things will just be beneath us. I'm not going to act like that. I realize that killing my brother is genocide. I'm not going to do that. We develop a different confidence. And so it is important. It's so important. Now, what we're going to do in this next segment, we're going to talk about segment 2 is the business segment, the entrepreneur. We're talking about how do we move this forward. So we talked about why it's important to help our communities. And I hope everyone pulls something from that. And even though we're talking about Own the Vision and how it benefits the black community, if you take a look around and you truly objectively look, you will see that all communities have tapped into this, as Jason mentioned. So you're tuned in right now to Successful Living Radio with Anita Maxwell. Our guest is Jason Warner of Own the Vision Foundation. And so we've been talking about why it's important for the communities, particularly the black community, to own the vision of creating the kind of leverage we need to be having a respectable seat at the table, whether that's the social justice table or the economic table. And so, Jason, we've talked about why it's important to help our community. Now let's talk about how does Own the Vision go about changing the community? We talked about that education that's necessary. So take me on community ABC. Now, how can Own the Vision help me go about changing my community?
So think of us as like the United Way for Black America. So the United Way model, right? People donate to the United Way. The United Way takes bulk sums and gives it to organizations around the community to impact change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is collect money all across the country and give it right back to the community, but just in large sums. And our goal is to build an infrastructure for just like a house. You can't have a house without building that foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are literally building that foundation and not asking everyone else to help us. And hey, if anyone else wants to help, come on, we need it. We appreciate it. But we, I guess for those who are religious folks or what have you, I always grew up hearing God helps those who help themselves. And we cannot continue to depend on other people to save us if we're not going to invest in ourselves. So our goal is to redirect some of the money that we spend every day to build infrastructure. There's a little over 44 million black people in this country, but there's not one national black grocery store or regional black grocery store chain in the country. So 44 million people eat every single day, but there's no black grocery stores. There's not one black major corporation, not one black corporation on the Fortune 500 list.
And when you say black grocery store, define what that means. Are you meaning owner, or because people hear black, they think only I'm welcome there, only black people are welcome
owner,
there.
owner. So here's the thing: if 99% of the corporations in this country are run and started by white men, that perspective is based off of white men. Nothing against white men, but that's their perspective. If you grew up in middle of America and there were two black people in your city, and because there's only 44 million, so we make up 12 or 13% of the population. So you can clearly be in some place in this country and not see a black person, but on TV. So you gone to college, you may have met Kevin and Michelle at college, and they'll get hired. But you don't have a perspective of any other person that fits out of your culture. So you say they don't fit the corporate culture when in hiring practices. And you don't, there's that, oh, well, we'll give you a try, but it doesn't work for people. So when you look at Asian-owned grocery store, Asian-owned nail shop or beauty salon or what have you, they hire within first, just like of the vast majority of America, which is Anglo-Saxon, they hire them first. You don't have double-digit unemployment rates in black America because we just are lazy and don't want to work. It's because we don't own anything and can't leverage. So when you talk about black-owned grocery store, it's about bringing the quality foods that we want in our communities and not just a corner store in their community. Whole Foods, they said they are not going into some of the black communities because the income is not there. Well, if we're the largest spender of nearly $1.3 trillion, where's the money not there? We're the largest consumer in this country, and we only make up 12% of the population.
1.3 trillion is what you said?
Annually, yes.
I've never thought about it that way, because I have heard of companies like a Chick-fil-A or a Whole Foods who will be looking for a certain level of income, but you're right. It's that same narrative is falsified because the beauty supply places open up there, the restaurants, the fast food places open up there, and they do well. So you're right. We are consuming incredibly, 1.3 trillion. Wow. Okay.
So it's not that I don't want. You're not allowed in there. It's capitalism. People have an opportunity to build business which drives competition. No one says anything about a Latin grocery store or an Asian grocery store or a Jewish grocery store. But if a black person says we're going to build a black-owned grocery store, it's a problem. It's called, well, why if I had a white-owned grocery store, yeah, they have. It's called Publix, Kroger, Walmart, Albertsons, Whole Foods, Wayfield Foods, all of these foods, because none of them are owned by anyone but white people.
That's the perfect segue into earlier I mentioned where people say, why do you have to have a black award show or a black bank? And I think that's always the answer I give. And I think a lot of times when you've got a majority culture, meaning everyone else has to assimilate or integrate into your culture, you don't realize it from that perspective, that everything is already what you're used to. And I also think about it this way, because let's be real, we're in the U.S., but there are some cultural differences.
Right.
There are some things that you might sell to me in a black grocery store that I have to go to a black side of town to find, because I won't find it if you are not tied into what's culturally important to me. It's no different than the Hispanics will open a grocery store that sells the kind of foods that are common for them to cook.
Right.
And so will the Asians. And, now it's become more popular to have a little aisle or half of aisle of ethnic foods, but that's because we do have differences. I am definitely not the person who will say to someone, I don't see color. If you don't see color, you are not being honest.
Your eyes are closed, and you're bumping into things.
Exactly. We all see color. It doesn't mean I have to treat you inequitably because I see color, but that's a part of the beauty of the diversity, is that we do all have different experiences. I'm not telling you to not see me as a black person or a white person or an Asian person. I'm just saying, don't treat me inequitably because I am not whatever other one.
Right, and that's the big push. It is not to exclude, because just like everyone can shop at a Walmart, a Target, the mall, what have you, you can shop at Black Foods or whatever that Vision food stores, whatever you can dream of it is. You can shop there. Anyone can shop there. You can go into Chinatown and shop there. You just may not be able to build a business that's non-Asian, but you can shop there, you can eat there, and no one has a problem with it. You can go into a Jewish neighborhood and go to Jewish kosher grocery stores and what have you, and no one has a problem with it. So it shouldn't be a problem if Anita and Jason collaborate and we build a grocery store in this neighborhood or in your neighborhood, because I'm giving you a diversity of thought and options. That's something that you, just like people travel the world, you get to experience it right there in your own neighborhood. And then you also, once you're building that competition, and they say small businesses, the fabric of our community, you're giving people options for employment. Because right now, we're looking at the inequity so vast. And I know you didn't ask about this, but Chicago. I got asked to speak on a radio show about should we send the National Guard into Chicago. And I said, more police is not going to change anything. This is the recipe that has been created with inequity. You can go in the south side of Chicago, the same public school system on a more affluent side of Chicago, same public school system. The kids in the south side of Chicago, they can barely get a book in the school. But in a more affluent area, in the same public school system or district, they're 10 times more educated because they have the resources coming to that school. If it's a public school system, everyone should have an equitable share of the resources. That's what it's showing. When you strip people of resources, they do what they have to do to survive. If I put rats A or mice A in a cage and I gave them ample food, the little spinning wheel, some ample water for all of them to survive, and they will be spinning their wheel, having a great time. You put mice B in a cage with water and food for one person. What's going to happen after the first day? They're going to fight and kill each other.
Yes.
That's the recipe that you've done in Black America. You put people in areas and you strip all their resources. So all we're trying to do is provide the resources that are there. People saying, well, from on the vision standpoint, we're just seeding and giving the change that we want to see. If there needs to be a Black grocery store, guess what? Someone has to upfront the money because the traditional banks are not lending in our areas. So here, we'll collect the money and we'll give it to someone to be the seed money to build this grocery store or build this corporation or expand their farm. Because contrary to popular belief, America was built on stolen land and free labor. So all these corporations that you see today, there are direct benefit from this stolen land and free labor. We're just trying to give a hand up to the less fortunate and the people that didn't benefit. We can't go in a time machine and benefit from the stolen land and free labor. Not that we want to benefit from stolen land and free labor, but to have an equity gap shift and to close that gap, we have to invest in ourselves first. Anita, you couldn't go out there and feed the homeless this weekend if you didn't have any lights or food. You'd have to take care of yourself first. All we're doing is trying to take care of home first so that we can make America a better place for everyone to live in. You bridge the equity gap, everyone benefits, everyone succeeds.
Everyone. I love that. Well, thank you so much. And what I will say, I mean, that was a great analogy using Chicago, because we do often hear so much about, look at your own communities, you're not doing it. And I know many Blacks and non-Blacks often talk about what our communities are not doing and all of that, but it really does have to start with us. I remember seeing this article about Chicago. It was actually a news story, and it was put on by a young lady that I respect a lot. She's a police officer, and she posted this story from Chicago that was saying, we all talk about we want to see our neighborhoods do better. How about what we go buy houses in those neighborhoods and be a part of the neighborhood looking better and having the income come up because we're willing to live there. But usually what we see is we're the fastest ones to run away from those as well. And it really does have to start back with us pouring into our own communities. So I say that to ask you, how does Own the Vision deal with even Black people not trusting the products that Black people would put out, the businesses? I often hear Black people, I hate hearing this. And I hate anything that gives me the impression that this may be the case. But, man, see, that's why I don't work with you. That's why you don't go to, the quality's not there. The service is not there. I think it's twofold, but I'd like to hear, how does Own the Vision overcome the barrier where even the people you're trying to help think that maybe they can get something better somewhere else?
Well, part of it is, who told you not to trust each other? Who told you that, you shouldn't trust another Black person? You only need to look at these different things. Who perpetrated that stereotype?
Well,
and it goes back to understanding. It goes back to this history, right? And if you don't get healing, you're doomed to repeat it. If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Black people had to, one, get permission to learn to read. Black people were taught not to trust other Black people in this country, but to trust the master. If you wanted to get free, you told on a slave revolt. You saved a white person in this country. If you wanted to get a job, you had to ask for permission to work such and such. If you wanted to get married, you had to ask for permission. So if you have that culture of mistrust, I have to turn on this person to get a piece of this what we call the American dream. I can't get it on my own. I have to have master allow me to have that. You continue and say, no, well, I can't trust them. And yes, we end up perpetrating or continuing that stereotype by not doing business all the way. But it's not, now I'm not going to say but, and it's because of a couple things. Many times we build our businesses out of emotion. So when you build something out of emotion, you don't go through the steps. So if I didn't fit the corporate culture and I was laid off from my job, if I wasn't provided the basic free education from a public school because of where I lived, if I didn't have access to opportunities and exposure, I didn't know to build my business and understand supply chain. I didn't know to build my business and go through customer service 101. Because I was pushed out of a system, I was not educated on the science of doing business, but actually only how to be a worker. Now I'm stuck in a place where I'm trying to mimic something that I see, but I don't know the back ends of it. And that's where we fall into this cycle. So instead of, and I challenge people all the time when they say they don't want to support a business, I say that's the worst thing you can do. Educate that business. So no, I don't want to pay 3 times as much for this product, but you have this business. I know that Sarah has this business over there. Mike has this business over there. Anita has this business over there. They're all similar businesses. I'm going to bring all 4 of you together and say, you guys are restaurants. You need paper products. You need dishwashing liquid. You need to buy your food through Cisco or whoever you buy it through. You guys are spending $1,500 a month on that. Let the 4 of you spend $6,000 collectively and buy that stuff at wholesale prices instead of the retail prices that you're getting it individually. So if you're getting 150 units of whatever you were getting by yourself, now you're getting 200 units of that same thing, so you can push your prices down because you work collaboratively. And that's what the Asians do right now when you look at beauty supply stores. You can go on the one in Dallas, you can go one in Miami, you can go on one in Atlanta, you can go on one in LA. You know exactly what aisle to go down. The prices are going to be about the same, give $1 or $2 given based on the economics of that city, but it's because they all bought in together. So once you give people the resources and teach them how to do, now you don't have to go through that continued stereotype of they're doing bad business. They're doing bad business because it's a product of such. There's so much crime in Chicago because it's a product of X. So we have to look at things at a root level versus, oh, the surface says, I have a cough, so I'm going to give you cough medicine, but you really have throat cancer, so I need to give you chemotherapy.
Wow. You are really educating, because a lot of what you're saying comes back to things that I've observed. Just the other day, we went to one of these, it's like an Asian food buffet, and I was in a new city. I had never been there, but I knew exactly what the menu was. I don't care where you go. These have popped up all over the country, $5.99 or something for all you can eat. But they clearly are all using the same distribution company, because the same food is on every menu, and I've been in, I know, 10 states. The exact same layout. It's like a McDonald's franchise. I mean, the cash registers at the front, the grills at the back, the fries are on the left. I mean, it is so that, but so you're right. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because that addresses what I said, where many black people will perpetuate the idea that we don't offer service without acknowledging that maybe we weren't as prepared as we need to be to go into business. That there are certain levels that you have of foundation of excellence and things you just have to do, and it has nothing to do with being black or white or any particular color. If I go into anyone's business and it's not great service, I don't want to do business with those people. I just don't want to hear it being grouped as all black people don't provide good service or we don't have the quality. And I'm also glad to hear you say sometimes we have to be willing to go in together and not feel like we need to reinvent the wheel or create something all on an island by ourselves. There truly is strength in numbers. And so you just helped somebody. Hopefully that helps somebody think about things you say. Think about what you think about. And think about the words that are coming out of your mouth when you start to say that and you lump any particular group into this generalization of they're not good at this, or they don't do this, or I don't do business with them. It starts with
Right.
us. It takes one of us to create a different narrative. What are you rehearsing? And be careful about that, because your children are listening as well. And unfortunately, I find a lot of our children rehearsing certain narratives that they're not even old enough to know about, but they've been hearing us say it. And so they pass it on, and they become those adults who are saying the same thing. So we have to be responsible about that in our communities in general, but yes, as we're talking about building our communities by having our fair share and an equitable share at the table. So thank you so much for that, Jason. I mean, that really educated me and has lit a fire in me to want to do more than even I do. So that's awesome. Now what we're going to do is, for this next segment, this is what we call our From the Mind of a Man segment. And since Jason is a man, and for those of you who've listened to previous shows, what we like to do with this segment of the show is make sure that we're doing more listening than talking. I find that a lot of times we are seeking to be understood more than we seek to understand. And relationships are critical in anything we do in this world. Anything you do, you have to have relationships in place. No man is an island. No one has been successful all on their own. Even if you got something that you thought was easy or free, I challenge you. It's only easy and free for you because somebody else paid the cost before you came along. So this segment is about men talking about what's on their mind. And I do have a particular topic that I'd like Jason to just spend some time to go into. And I'm going to tie his From the Mind of a Man topic to what we're talking about here, how we own the vision, how we improve our communities, namely black communities in this instance. But as I mentioned, take something from it for your own community. What we're talking about is not just happening in the black community. We can all do something in our community. So, Jason, your topic today, I happen to know that you are an author with some pending books, and one of them is lessons learned. It's called The Rules of Engagement, Lessons Learned from a Failed Marriage, the Male Perspective. So since you are good at giving that perspective, what I'd like for you to just spend a little time, maybe about 5 minutes or so, and I'm just going to listen. No questions here, I'm just listening. But I'd like for you to talk about, we're talking about community building here. Marriage and family is key in community building. So I want to give you this segment to speak from the mind of a man about community and the impact of men in the homes and in the community. So speak to our listening audience about that male perspective. You have the floor.
So when you look at community and you look at broken communities, from a male's perspective and from the man's point of view and being an active member in that community, we cannot build our communities without being present in the community. And that starts at home. I talked about you trying to go out and feed the homeless, and if you're homeless yourself and you don't have any food. We have to start, and especially as men, to be that example. And I'll speak to men in whatever relationship that you have, orientation that you have. Men have anatomically are built to be a bit stronger and I guess quote unquote push and lead, right? So I'm not taking anything away from women in that role of leadership and saying that is a gender role, but men, I'm saying we have a responsibility to be there. We have a responsibility to be there as fathers, as brothers, as husbands, as uncles, as mentors, as people to connect what we call this community, this village, and then down to the family unit. If you're not participating in that process, none of the other processes are going to work. You don't have to say, I want to get married and start a family. If you don't get married and start a family, you have a responsibility still as a man to the community to help be that surrogate uncle, that surrogate stepfather, that surrogate brother, that surrogate mentor. Because when they say it all starts at home, when people have this miseducation, they're looking to someone to be an inspiration, a role model. So, man, I call, and I don't just call on people. I practice what I preach. I have 2 children of my own. I'm divorced. My kids can't tell it. When my ex-wife and I are around, it's business as usual. No, we don't live in the same house, but we co-parent. Adults, sometimes we can't be adults together. But for children, we have to make their life easier because they didn't ask to be here. So guess what? Sometimes you got to swallow that pride and understand, hey, this is not the most convenient or comfortable. But you do what you have to do because, again, when it goes back, and I talked about for me and my journey and my push, it's bigger than me. You know, it's awesome to be considered and to be in Ebony magazine this month. It's awesome to be able to be on this show talking about my journey and what we're doing in the community. It's awesome to be able to do the things and experience the things that I have to do, but it's not about me. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than even my own children. So we have to be, as men, we have to show everyone else that we're strong, that we're able. Even when we're not physically able to do it, we're going to still be there. Because if you look back again in history, it was to separate the men, to break the men down, to allow the men to sit and watch the women be raped and know there is nothing that they can do about it, to castrate black men and put their penis in their mouth while they're hanging, because modern sociology said that black people are oversexed and aggressive. But if you look at the history books and the census, it showed there was more mulatto people born every single year, almost 600,000 new every year in the time of slavery. So you mean to tell me that a person wouldn't revolt, but they will go in and rape a white woman? But it's a false narrative. So we have to be the backbone to build our community back, to erase that distrust narrative that some women have of us and some people have of us, to erase that monster appearance that, you know, Mr. Terrence Kutcher had because he looked like a big bad dude. Change that narrative, but it starts with being present at home, building relationships. If you're not ready for a relationship, don't play with someone. If you're not ready to take on that responsibility, step out of the way so someone else can. But we have too much at stake to play around and not walk into what we're called to do. We cannot continue another 500 years redoing this cycle, putting the button on repeat. So there are men out here that need to step up. When I see them, I hold them accountable. The brothers that I walk with, we hold each other accountable and hold other people accountable that we don't even know. But anyone listening, I implore you to be a part of that village building, especially my men. And I ask for my women to walk with us, to put on a different lens, just like we ask other people to put on a different lens when we're trying to get them to understand why we say build black and start black businesses. Is not to say we don't want to work with you. We need to have a position of leverage and to participate in this process. That's a part of the rules of the game. So in the same vein, I'm asking women to understand from whence we've come, put on a different lens as we walk together to build this thing that we call our community, our village, our homes. Because if you only look at it from one perspective, you're going to continue to repeat that cycle. We're going to continue to repeat that cycle. It's not to say, well, give people a pass. It's more to say, understand where they're coming from and help people to break this cycle, because we've all been brainwashed and told a false narrative. And that's my male perspective.
Wow. I love it. I love it. I know I will have that on repeat. I will be sharing that with people. That was so powerful and exactly what the From the Mind of a Man segment is meant to do. Thank you so much for the wisdom and the encouragement that you just imparted, Jason. I mean, this whole conversation has been awesome, but I'm telling you, there are different pieces of this conversation that will be impactful for different reasons. And if there is a man in your life, if you're a woman and you're listening, make sure you hear how we can do it, because as we go, our men go. I mean, we really are the fuel for them as well. So, I mean, this is a team sport. Building community is a team sport. So thank you so much for that, Jason. And so now I know we could talk about this all day, and I'm really enjoying this, but I know you're a busy man. So we want to flow into our last segment, which is just simply, this is our Making Sense segment. This is often the time that I talk about finances with our listeners. Many have questions about, how do I do this? How do I do better with my money? But since we're talking about community building, we're going to keep that up. So, Jason, I'm listening to you. I'm thinking, wow, he shared so much information, but it just sounds so big. I mean, community is so big. I do what I can for my family. I'm making a decent living. But, I mean, how do I do all of that? So what do you say to me in my community? How can my little bit help? Like, what can I do?
So, it's a couple of things, and that's why we created On the Vision Foundation, because we wanted to make it small gives to make a large impact. And when we started, our goal was for everyone that looked like us to donate $1 a month. It's nothing, right?
$1 a month.
$12 a year. $12 a year, and we can put it right back in our community. But people were saying, well, we don't see how it can happen overnight, and we want an overnight fix. And one of the things I keep telling people is you can't change 500 years of history overnight. If you gained 300 pounds, it didn't happen overnight, and you're not going to lose 300 pounds overnight. So we have to take bite-sized chunks. But I understand people want overnight success. But just think about this. I'll give you a statistic in Atlanta, right? There's about 1.7 million black people in the metro Atlanta area. If everyone donated $1 a month, that's $1.7 million that's re-influx to build infrastructure. You could have a grocery store chain in this region in a year. You can have stopping gentrification and building equity in communities where you can hold a school system accountable, because what they use in equity is that the housing values are low. So instead of someone coming in to buy your home, we go in and rebuild your home, lower your mortgage interest rate so you're not hit and impacted with that tax burden. But now you have equity to, one, start a business, to hold the school systems accountable because it's a higher taxable base, to leave something to future generations. So that's just with $1, $12 a year. But we wanted to take it down because people were they wanted that distrust that has been created through this dissonance that's been pushed through us. And we said, you know what, we're going to launch the Give 12 project. So in a couple of weeks, we launch in Atlanta, Give 12 Atlanta, but we're going to 12 different cities across the country so people can see what $12 a month with 12,000 people can do. So we'll be in Dallas in a few months. It'll be Give 12 Dallas, we'll have Give 12 Atlanta, Charlotte, New York, LA. But we take 12,000 people in that community to give $12 a month for the next 12 months. That's $144, right? We then turn around and give 9 organizations in that community $100,000 each to do what they say they're going to do. If they're doing mentorship, here's $100,000 to do mentorship. If you're doing getting people credit ready to be homeowners, here's $100,000 so you can impact another 1,000 people. If you're introducing kids to STEM, if you're whatever that's doing to impact our community, here's that $100,000. But we're also going to see the change for that next entrepreneur. We're giving 12 entrepreneurs $25,000 in each city. So now you can see what happens, right? So, and it's not just a level. We break it down into 3 categories. That person with the idea. Because the person with the idea can't compete with a person that's been in business for 5 years. So 4 people with an idea will get $25,000. 4 people at that startup phase will get $25,000. And 4 people in the I've been in business 5 years, a mature business, will get $25,000. So you're not competing apples and oranges. You're competing oranges and oranges. And you will be able to pitch your idea. So now you can see where the change happens in just 12 months in your community by saying, you know what, instead of going to that movie today, I'm going to donate my instead of going to lunch one day out of the month, I'm going to donate my $12. Instead of buying that drink at the bar, or instead of, a month of Netflix or my 2 cups of Starbucks, this is what I can do to see the change in my community. Because if you don't invest in it, you're not going to get a return from it. You invest in your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds, your financial planning, your long-range plan. You get your insurance. You do all those things for a return on your investment. You buy a house for a return on your investment. When do you invest in your community, and how do you do it? If you want to see that grocery store, if you want to see more businesses, the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, because of inequity, black people are not getting the angel investors that have the great ideas that are coming to them. So we have to angelly invest in them. Black people are not getting the business loans. The Justice Department is proving that time and time and again. But those are slap on the wrist because people are still banking with them. So instead of begging someone to do it, we feed it. I'll give you another analogy, and I think it will hit home. If a man or a woman is being abused by their spouse, we never expect that spouse to say, you know what, I've been whooping your behind for the past 10 years. I'm so sorry, I was wrong. Here's $20,000 to get on your feet and leave me. We never think that situation is going to happen. We just expect for that person that's being abused to get fed up so much that they get out of the situation. So if we don't think the abuser is going to stop abusing, why do we think that the system that has never been set up for one group of people to succeed is going to say, you know what, we're sorry for stealing you from your homeland, putting you into slave labor, raping your women, abusing your children, doing all types of experiments on you in the name of science. Still to this day, we're only considered 3/5 of a human in the Constitution. It's never been ratified. Why do we think that same system is going to say, you know what, we're sorry. This has been going on for 500 years. It's going to change now. Here's your 40 acres and a mule, and let's go. We can't expect that. So you have to change the narrative and invest in yourself. Every other group that comes to this country, they understand they have to invest in themselves first. If you do an open records request, and it's Public Information Act of SBA loans, right? They're federally backed loans. And just look at the guarantors on many of these gas stations and in hotels, many of built by Arab and in Middle Eastern Americans and Asian Americans, they have like 16 guarantors. That's 16 people in a family that's investing in this one grocery store or gas station or hotel or restaurant. They understand that they have to invest in themselves. 16 people all are not going to get a great profit. But guess what? When you multiply it by 20 restaurants or 20 gas stations that all the family owns, now that's when you start seeing success. So it can't be overnight instant gratification. Just like anything else, you have to work through it, but we have to work together, and we have to invest in ourselves to get the return for ourselves.
Wow. That is so rich and so helpful. So, I mean, you're hitting the major cities, but Jason, I can tell you that you can count on my husband and I to support. When you're hitting Dallas or some of the other cities where we have friends and family, we'll make sure that we encourage them to do that as well. I don't know that I've heard anyone break down how that small molehill can just really grow into a mountain, and make sure we have realistic expectations about it. So I would say, just with everything else you've said, we can put our treasure where our talk is, but we also can continue to be an example in our communities, as you've so eloquently expressed throughout the rest of the conversation. So I just want to say in closing, before we let you go, thank you so much for joining us. I understand that you're a busy man, featured in Ebony magazine this month. Huge deal. And we realize that this is just the beginning of the conversation. It's up to us to keep those conversations going in our communities. The narrative that we speak, what we're modeling to our children, how we are investing in our own communities and being intentional about that. So, Jason, many people are listening today, and they're wanting to know, wow, I really want to know more about Own the Vision. I want to know more about, are you coming near my city, or what if I'm not in one of those cities that he named? So, and I really like to learn how to implement some solutions in my own city, in my own town. So before we close out, why don't you tell people how they can find you, your different social media handles or wherever, and what's the best way to reach out to you and learn more about Own the Vision Foundation?
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you again. I'll talk about this show. I'll talk about just being in Ebony. It's because of, me walking in my purpose and listening to what I've been called to do and being genuine. So, I'm honored to even be able to have this conversation with you today. I'm excited about what's going to happen in the future so that we can own the vision of success for all of our communities, for this to spread worldwide, because there's a lot of people hurting across this world. But to get in contact with me, you can visit the website, www.ownthevision.com. That's O-W-N, own it. Own your vision of success. So ownthevision.com. People can email me directly. I'm Jason. So it's easy. Let's go. Jason@ownthevision.com. That's directly to me. Jason@ownthevision.com. Ownthevision.com is the website. Instagram @ownthevision. My Instagram @Jason L. Warner. Jason L. Warner on Facebook. I think that's what it is. Jason L. Warner on Twitter. I'm accessible, and it's about us doing this together. I can't do this alone. Anita, you can't do your show alone and impact the people that you do, from helping them with financial planning and all the great work that you do. We have to do this as a collective, and for me, it's not about reinventing the wheel. We could have said, you know what, we want to create another nonprofit to be a mentor, to do financial education. But I said, there's all these great organizations out there that are doing that great work. What's the missing link? And it's the funding source. Everyone's fighting for these corporations to give them money. I don't care if you're gay, straight, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, agnostic. We just want to help you. And we take the egos out. We raise money to support our communities in all the intersections of that community. It's not just helping the conscious, quote unquote, conscious woke folks. It's not just helping the straight black man. It's not just helping the LGBT community that is black. It's not just helping the battered women or children. It's helping everyone that walks in this intersection that we call black in America.
Awesome.
And when you make that change, everyone benefits.
That's what it's about. That is what it's about. That is community. Everyone can benefit. There is enough to go around for all of us. And so thank you so much again, Jason. That's a perfect segue into a big announcement we have here on Successful Living. I want you guys to know that we believe in giving back as well. And so what we are announcing is the Successful Living Treasure Transformation. Now, what that is starting in November 2017, our team of licensed financial professionals will select 5 people and or families for a treasure transformation. When you think about treasure, you think your money and transforming it. I don't know anyone who cannot do better with their finances, who does not want to do better with their finances. If you think about Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest men in the world, if he is always looking for new ways for his money to work for him. And so we are going to take 5 people on a journey to helping them improve their finances for free. This is a transformation. Let me tell you who's eligible. U.S. citizens from any state. So we will select people from a pool from all across the country. At least $5,000 in current debt. Charge-offs, that has already happened, and often there are things that are not going to change that. But if you have at least $5,000 in current debt, you are eligible. And you must be currently employed. We are about being realistic. Obviously, if you're able to pay your bills, then there are a lot of new things that you can learn on how to do that more effectively. And we are excited about taking you through a 6-month journey starting in November 2016 through April of 2017. And so you must send in, listen to this, a maximum 500-word write-up about why you should be selected. Maximum 500-word count. If you're not sure about that, just use your Microsoft Word. It'll tell you exactly how many words you used, but why you should be selected for this transformation. We will make the selection October 26th. The winners will be announced at that time. Again, it's a 6-month period. Your identity will not be revealed. So there's no need to feel embarrassed about where you are. We are all on a journey to do better, but your identity will not be revealed. And get this, the final piece is you will be a participant featured on the Successful Living radio show. We will follow you through the 6-month period because it's important that you not only get in a better situation, but that you're able to share with other people how easy it is when you decide to make a decision. And so you will be featured as a participant for that 6-month period on the Successful Living radio show, where we talk about where you started and look at where you ended up. So we are so excited about that. We want people to spread the word. There will be flyers on Facebook and social media. If you know some people or if you yourself qualify for that, we'd love to have you involved, and we will have a team of people read through your write-ups to determine the 5 people selected. So we are excited to bring the Successful Living Treasure Transformation to you. Thank you guys so much for spreading the word and be supporters as you always are. Until next time, we will see you right here back on the Successful Living radio show with Anita Maxwell. And thank you again to our guest for today, Jason Warner.
You've been listening to Successful Living Radio with Anita Maxwell. You can listen to our podcast at www.successfulliving.com for new shows and playbacks. And remember, life is short, live it well, live it successfully.